the size of government. But we already see, you know, Greece just the other day accepted a plan for the 15th time on what to do. And of course, it was to cut down back on some of the jobs and some of the welfare. But there are riots in the streets because they believe, as many people in this country believe, they're entitled to it. They believe entitlements are rights. Entitlements aren't right. You have a right to your life. You have a right to your liberty. You should have a right to keep the fruits of your labor, but you're not entitled to take your neighbor's property through the politicians. But because we allowed government to grow in this seductive manner, borrowing and printing money, when government gets bigger, it only gets bigger by shrinking our liberties. And now we're in a crisis period because our personal liberties are under systematic attack. These last 10 years have been very devastating, even to the point now recent law actually has repealed some of the provisions of the Magna Carta. You know, that's a few years old, and yet we're repealing that, like allowing the military to arrest American citizens and held without a trial indefinitely. So our liberties are being threatened, and therefore we have to take a stand, and that's where I'm encouraged. There's a lot more people today wanting to take a stand, and they can and they will. But we have to realize that we need to understand what the principles of liberty is all about. I believe we have to know that governments can't give us our liberty. The most they can do is to protect our liberties. But our liberties, our life and our liberties come from our Creator, or in a natural way. It's a gift given to us, and we should own our lives, and we should own the fruits of our labor. But if we assume the government's doing it, it won't work. The effort to do this will require a lot of effort. It requires a lot of political efforts, obviously, but the political effort actually is secondary to the intellectual efforts. Ideas have consequences. I'm absolutely convinced of this, and I think that's what's happening in the country. People are coming to the obvious conclusion and the correct conclusion that the age of Keynesianism and inflationism and deficit financing, the age is over. We have to live up and be honest with ourselves. This is, if we recognize that, then we can start doing the right things. Being in denial is one thing, and we've been in denial. We believe for too long that we can continue to do this. When the country was super wealthy, and we were at one time, we're not now. We were the wealthiest country in the world, and we had the largest middle class. And today, our middle class is shrinking. It's shrinking in size, and it's shrinking in wealth. And the wealth, of course, is gravitating to the few. Now, the few, you know, that's a mixed bag on challenging those few who have a lot of money. In a free society, there will always be rich people. And if a person is rich, or a company is rich, or if somebody sells us a product that we like, and they make a lot of profit because we make them profitable, and we buy their goods, we like their product, and they make a lot of money, and they get no benefits from the government, we shouldn't frown on that. But if a company gets very, very big because they get special deals and contracts, and they're part of the military-industrial complex because they're part of the banking system, and they get bailed out by the government, that's a different story. We should deny them the special benefits and deny them the bailouts. One other thing that is very healthy that's happening is the failure of this redistribution of wealth for the benefit of the poor. Libertarians and conservatives have done a lousy job over the years, especially when we were so wealthy. It was hard to say, oh no, we can't do that. Well, this will lead to some problems. And by just forcibly trying to help certain groups. But the evidence is here now. You know, governments have nothing. They produce nothing. They only can steal from one group and give to another. So there is no such thing as free medical care. There's no such thing as free education. There's no such thing as free housing. And yet, oh yes, or you people just don't care about people. So we have had in the past at least lost a humanitarian argument. Because if you weren't caring enough to take from one group to another, you don't care about poor people. But what happens if it becomes so clearly obvious that this system of government is no better than socialism, that it destroys wealth and makes more people poor? This is what's happening to us today. And there's nothing clearer than the housing bubble that we had. The housing program was set up, easy credit, affirmative action programs, Community Reinvestment Act, tell banks what they had to do, make sure poor people had their houses. But then some people ended up with a house that they really couldn't afford. And some people made a lot of money off the deal, the brokers and the mortgage people and the gamblers with the derivatives and Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac. They made billions of dollars. And then, of course, when the bubble burst, as was predictable, then they say, well, you have to bail us out. We're too big to fail. And what happened? They got bailed out. They're back in business again. But what happened to the middle class? The middle class people lost their jobs and they lost their houses. It's proof that this program of government intervention and planning doesn't work, and therefore we have to restore our understanding of how the market works, understand the confidence that free people can take care of more people than all the government programs put together. Governments will never be perfect, and the closer the government is to our home, the better it is. And right now, we fight and try to keep the federal government smaller and keep more government locally. But we also have to be very much aware of international government that's coming. There is so much of that. They're talking about a substitute for the current monetary system, a new currency under the United Nations and the IMF. And of course, I see our national security hindered by belonging to those groups. That's never helped by belonging to the United Nations and going to war under a UN resolution or under NATO.